AM 1240 and 92.7 FM Nooga Radio. This is Cindy. I'm so honored to be your host and outdoor activity, event, and adventure guide for our community. I'm definitely going to want to hear about any activities, any competitions, festivals, anything that gets people outdoors. I definitely want to hear about it. So please email information to nrocindy@gmail.com. That's NRO, like Nooga Radio Outdoors, Cindy@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you. And I'm so excited about the show. We've got lots in store for you. But first, a quick plug for Chicken Salad Chick. A lot of our motivation here to get people outdoors is we want to encourage a healthy lifestyle. And though Chicken Salad Chick isn't health food, it's a really good food that's very healthy. I'm talking 000, folks. The classic Carol has 0 carbs, 0 sugar, and 0 gluten. Did you hear that? 000 and yummy chicken salad. They have a great variety to choose from. And you can find the menu at Chicken Salad Chick, Chattanooga.com. That's Chicken Salad Chick, Chattanooga.com, with a downtown and an East Brainerd location. And again, this show is to give everyone access to the activities and the events and the adventures found in the great outdoors. The format is based on my own personal passion for helping people, my love of the outdoors, and my love of the Chattanooga area. It's such an outdoor hub. NoogaOutdoors wants to promote and encourage fundamental opportunities for change to how people live. I come from metro areas where there's a whole lot of time spent in automobiles, but it happens a lot here in our little Chattanooga metro. Being in your car or at a desk for multiple hours per day is not good for you. And we just want to encourage you to get outside. It's not always about time. It can be very intimidating. And that's why we bring people on to talk about activities, to give you ideas and give you information on how to plug in easier. And I have Randy Wharton here with me this afternoon to help introduce Wild Trails to the listeners. Hi, Randy. How are you?
Hello. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you. I'm so excited to learn more about Wild Trails. I've had, like, when I said I was going to do this show, 3 different people said, you got to call Wild Trails. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I got to call Wild Trails. And it's funny because being an outdoor enthusiast, a hang glider pilot, mountain biking, and being you think you kind of know about everything that you don't. And that's what I love about this platform is we're going to get to learn and discover so many new ways to things to try and ways to get people plugged into trying them.
Yeah.
It's going to be fun. So Randy, tell me, to get started, before we talk about Wild Trails, tell me a little bit about yourself. Are you from Chattanooga?
No, my wife and I are Boulder, Colorado.
Oh.
Grew up there, and it was a great place to grow up, without a doubt, but not such a great place now. It just has changed so much over the decades. Really, it's turned into kind of a big city. It's an interesting little community that's surrounded by mountains, but there's not a whole lot to do in the outdoors up there. Mm-hmm. Really. There's limited trails. A lot of people think it's a phenomenal place, but you got to drive. Most of the whole Front Range is just surrounded by private property. So I'm so thankful for our forefathers here in Chattanooga, because they bought up whole bunches of lands and gave it to the community. If you look around us, we are just completely surrounded by public land everywhere. And there's not a whole lot of that in Boulder. And the other thing is just the whole Front Range is just encroaching on Boulder. And it's going to be a giant city from Colorado Springs to Fort Collins at some point, because everybody wants to live close to the Rocky Mountains, but living in the mountains is really hard winter. And hardly anybody wants to live out on the Great Plains. So it's like this 20-mile stretch right up to the mountains is where everybody wants to live. And we're just not big city people. So I got recruited. We first moved to Huntsville. High tech was my background, electrical engineering, and I recruited a great company, $500 million a year company, and I had some pretty senior management position there. And we thought, it'd be kind of cool, a 3 to 5 year stint, and then move back to the West somewhere. And probably would have moved somewhere else had we not discovered Chattanooga. So
I can relate.
We came here early on to do the stump jump, the nationally renowned 50K race that Rock Creek puts on. and Wild Trails put it on for, probably 7 or 8 years. And so we came and did that. It's like, wow, this is a really cool town. They got the river going right through the middle of town and all these trails. And so we just kept coming back here, and then had to find a way to get here. My wife got a master's degree there in Huntsville, and then started teaching. So got a job here, and here we are.
And
So
here you are.
yeah,
Great.
we just love this town.
And we're glad to have you here. And I totally relate to your story. I'm from Texas, mainly Houston and Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
And it is, I shared yesterday on the show, and I'm a starter. Like if I'm a connector, so if I can't find a place to connect, I create something. And here I am in, Houston's the 4th largest city in the country. It's just out of control, major big city. And it's really hard to find something to do. There's one major park, in the center of Houston that it's not easily accessible for most people. But, parks, you're pretty limited.
It's not
parks.
The wilderness.
Yeah, exactly. And I love Texas, and I love the big city. There's parts. I'm a business person, and I thrive in the chaos and the hustle and the bustle. But we got introduced as we were working out here in 88 when I first got introduced to Chattanooga. I mean, we came as a child. I'd been to Ruby Falls and Raccoon Mountain and all that as a child. But I got up here, and like I was sharing with Joe before, I got introduced to hang gliding. And it wasn't just the hang gliding that rooted us here. We just fell in love with the whole area. It's a hub. It's not about one specific outdoor activity that you fall in love with. There's just so much opportunity for so many wonderful things to do, and such beautiful scenery and scenic backyard that we have. So tell me about Wild Trails. How was that inspired?
So we actually tried to start a trail running organization in Colorado, and it just never caught ground. We just didn't have the time. And then in Huntsville, they have a really interesting trail and road running and track organization, and a lot of everything's really kind of united, but they don't have a lot of trails there, and so there's just not a whole lot to do trail wise. So we moved here, and we thought, well, look, we gotta get this going, because
we got the trails.
First thing we saw was there's very little trail maintenance. I mean, all the trails we went on, we were the only ones there, and there were down trees all over the place, and a lot of overgrowth, a lot of briars. So no trail maintenance, and hardly any trail racing, and hardly any trail runners, really. So we said, well, let's just start a little running club. And so originally it was called the Wilderness Trail Running Association, the Boonies. And so it was just a club. We wanted to put on some races, so started putting on some races. Actually, one of the first ones we put on was the stage race we're doing this weekend, and just really started getting a lot of traction, and started getting a lot of money in the bank. Like, well, what are we going to do with this? Because we're a nonprofit, and we aren't going to, nobody was getting paid. And so we just said, we got to start giving back. And so we started doing little trail projects, and we started giving organizations some money to start doing trail projects. It just kept growing and growing, and just branching out to different things. And we ended up being, at one point, I think we put on 11 races throughout the year. And
wow.
We give grants to organizations that want to do some more stuff. And it doesn't have to be a trail project. It could be anything that gets people out using the trails. And then we migrated into waterways, fell in love with stand-up paddleboarding. So there's just 77 miles of flat water creeks that we've identified that need to be cleared, but you just can't paddle them until they get cleared. I found out the other day that there was an organization in town called the Water Scouts. 40 years ago, you could paddle from Trenton to downtown on Lookout Creek. And so we said, well, we got to open that back up, because that was just phenomenal. That would be a 20-mile paddle trip. And so we got to looking into it, and finally figured out how to best do it. And we're starting to clear all these creeks and started to put paddleboard races on. And it's just, it's just a kind of an interesting morph into things. And now we're starting to really branch out into what I think is the biggest problem, not in just Chattanooga, but in America, is just the downward trend of health and wellness. And the outdoors is really the best place that you can do to really get that, get that light bulb going on it. And so we started this 200-mile club that's kind of geared to get people off the couch. And we're going to do a lot more to have some support networks created, or if they're not already created, if they are created, we're going to help promote them. Just to get things going and try to get schools and organizations and churches and certainly all the businesses in town using us. I mean, really, we're a great helper. All we need to do is get people out on the trailhead,
that's the goal of this show.
We can gear them in the right place. We can help them go out there. If it's just a nature walk you want to do, we can do it. But if you want to help out and clear trails, if you want to go for a run, we do group runs all the time, hikes. We're partnering up with the Make-A-Wish Foundation on their Trailblaze Challenge, so we're getting a lot of hikers out now. More starting now think, maybe I could be a trail runner someday, that kind of thing. So
yeah, I love that, and so we're going to be a great strategic alliance, because that is the motivation of the show. And I'm so excited about discovering wild trails. And already it's like, I'm excited about learning so much for me to get involved with. So there's going to be incredible perks for me with doing this. That's what happens when you come in with good intentions to help others. And it's amazing what comes back to you. And I'm going to get to meet and definitely put things like wild trails on my Chattanooga bucket list that I will be creating, so that I can give firsthand testimony of some of these great events and activities that we can get involved with. But I love that, because, we're talking about trail racing and people are like, oh, that's not for me.
A lot of people, they think it's an elite thing. It's super dangerous. And I just don't get it, because, it doesn't take long to figure out that it's not, that it really is. I can understand the basics of it. Go out on the trail. You're not used to trail running. You trip and fall down. You're going to scrape your knee. You're going to roll your ankle or whatever. It's clearly, if you've never run on a technical trail before, chances are pretty good you're going to trip and fall down at some point, and you're going to probably spill some blood out on the trail. But 100% guarantee, if you run every day on the road, a consistent surface, you're going to get repetitive stress injury. You're going to get an IT band that's going to flare. You're going to get some kind of plantar fasciitis. You're going to get all kinds of stuff that takes a long time to heal. So that's the problem with everybody, that we think that, just exercise is a good thing. And yeah, it is. But if that's all you do and you don't do anything to build stabilizer muscles or, cross train to make sure you've got strong knees or whatever, that repetitive consistency is going to get you in the end.
Well, and plus, for me personally, it's boring. I talked about yesterday how I've gotten this net walking group started in the Ooltewah area, and we mostly ended up on the trails. And for me personally, it keeps my interest, because you do have to pay attention. You've got to watch your footing. Where if I'm just walking a path, I get really, a paved path, I get really bored. Yes, the scenery is beautiful. I love soaking in. But I like that. It's like it's an extra advantage to give your brain extra exercise. Does that make sense?
Well, there's a realistic fear factor. I think it's a lot less real than most people make it, of the outdoors. And here, obviously the river walk is outdoors, but if you go on like the Skyuka Trail all the way out to Skyuka Springs, that's wilderness. There's a lot of there's a mountain lion that we don't know for sure if he's just migrating through, because mountain lions stay together for X number of years and then they split apart and find their own land.
Right.
So they may just be coming through, but it's been spotted quite a few times this spring, and there's a lot of bobcats and a lot of wild turkeys and a lot of snakes. This is probably the best place in the country to live if you like snakes, but it's the best place to live for the minimal amount of dangerous snakes. We really only have timber rattlers and copperheads that are poisonous here, and they're mildly poisonous compared to a lot of the rest of them in the country. So it's just not so bad like a lot of people think of it. So keeps your mind thinking too. It's like
that's what I was saying.
Right around the corner,
it
could be a beautiful bird, or it could be a snake, or it could be a whatever. So you gotta really engage your brain out there, where if you're running on the road, you can just go to sleep.
Exactly. That's exactly what's more appealing to me. And there is something, I've been really blessed to get to have some adventures. And when we got the hang gliding, I actually got offered, I got to run the shop. I lived in a loft apartment above the hang gliding shop in Dunlap, Tennessee for a year out in the wilderness. It was a ground. I know it was just a dream year. And we to get to it, you had to go to like 2 miles down a gravel road, and there was only maybe 4 or 5 other like homes back there, all, hardcore hang glider pilots.
Yep.
And oh my goodness, though, it was one of the, and I got to tell you, I was major city girl. I was directly from Dallas, Texas. I was one of those that screamed and wailed her hands when there was a wasp in the room and so forth like that. 2 months later, I was so over it. You got copperhead run-ins and all kinds of things all the time, and you just learn to, that's part. You're in their world, and that's part of it. But I can remember so many times going over at sunset, and I could feel the therapy of it, of sitting on the hang glider ramp and just sitting there, with my elbows on my knees, crossed, and just soaking it in, and just being so thankful that I could be in the center of that, and just feeling the therapy and the blessing of just being out in the woods. And to this day, I crave it and miss it. So if all it is going and getting on the, I don't like to ride my bike on the trails because I don't ride enough to be that advanced paths of my bike.
Girl.
But yeah, exactly. I got tricked onto some, I was telling Joe to ESPN, and I was told Stringer's Ridge was pretty moderate too, but I almost got killed on Kill Hill because I'm one of those, like, once I'm committed, I'm going for it. But yeah, that's so from my opportunity to get in the trails, walking, but we kind of run walk, and it's fun because you focus, you just watch where you put your feet. And I enjoy it, and I'm so glad to get introduced to Wild Trails where you're encouraging that. And though it's, he's talking about trail racing, I love that there's this balance where they're doing things, the community outreach. You mentioned the 200-mile club that's introducing people to the trails. So talk a little bit more about that. So what's it like for a listener that's like, hey, I would love to be able to connect, and find people to walk with that, are enthusiastic about the trail. Where would they start?
Well, the 200-mile club is actually 13 different activities. We have walking with or jogging with a baby stroller. We have hula hoops, unicycle, every aerobic activities and yoga and golf, everything, mostly outdoors. Aerobic classes are usually indoors and yoga's indoors, but most of it's outdoors. But 14 separate activities, and all of the activities equate to the club mile. So, say for instance, running and hiking is 1 for 1. A bike, you ride 4 miles equals 1 club mile. Swimming is a quarter mile equals a mile. You play 18 holes of golf. If you walk, it's equals 6 miles, et cetera, et cetera. Amount of time that you're doing aerobic classes or CrossFit or that kind of stuff equals a mile. So whether it takes you 6 months or 6 years to get 200 miles, so be it. Once you get 200 miles, you're in the club. So then the next step is trying to get a merit badge. And so a merit badge is basically, can I do one activity and get 200 miles in 90 days? So then it, ups the ante. And then at the end of the year, we're going to have a celebration for, the number of merit badges people have. I'm kind of like the stars on a football helmet kind of thing. So how many different activities can you do, get a merit badge is, and how many miles of, who's done the most miles, the most activities, et cetera. And so that's kind of the dashboard of the thing.
Yes.
But the real thing, as you've probably seen, and anybody sees it, New Year's resolutions, they usually only last weeks or limited months, mainly because they don't have a support structure to help keep them going. So they might be motivated right off the bat. But so our next sort of phase of this is going to be to take all those 14. And if there's enough people that want any kind of other activity, we'll add it. But say, for instance, the baby strollers, I found out the other day, there's a thing called Health for Moms or Fit for Moms or something like that. So they go down to Coolidge Park and they do these exercises all with their kids in their baby stroller. So I want to engage people with that and have some kind of, mainly it'll be a social network sort of support structure that'll get these moms out there on their baby strollers, meeting others. Same thing with anybody. I've discovered, we have an awesome unicycle community here. I didn't know that, but there's a bunch of them. There's 2 separate clubs that are unicycles. I'm going to
want to talk to them.
They are phenomenal. There's one guy probably does more in his unicycle than I, walk and run in a year. So that's really strong. And I just never knew this was happening. So it may encourage people to get involved in these other organizations that will help them, keep it up. So it's kind of like, there's a lot of people that are mountain bikers or are trail runners, but they do it maybe once or twice a month. So that's not going to help you in the big picture. If you want to be active and healthy, you really need to do something about every day. And if you're training for something, you probably don't want to do it 7 days a week. You want to take 1 day rest, but that is after you get a good base and you really get into it. So you want to really think about being active every single day. So we're trying to go from recreation, which I don't really like that word anymore because it just kind of sounds more sedentary than it should be, but make these activities your lifestyle, not something that you just do once in a while.
Right. And a lot of what we're doing here is introducing you to lots of things, creation. And I want to encourage you, if you're not getting out at all, just going to the zoo, go walk outside and go to the zoo, go walk downtown, just go to a festival and walk around, just whatever it takes to get started, just get outside and get moving around. And then be sure and listen to Nooga Radio Outdoors, and we'll help you, encourage you to the next step of getting more active and finding a great place to plug in. You're listening to Nooga Radio Outdoors on AM 1240 and 92.7 FM Nooga Radio. This is Cindy, and I'm your host and outdoor activity events and adventure guide for our community. And I want to hear about more great guests like Randy Wharton with Wild Trails to come on the show here. You can email me, nrocindy@gmail.com. That's nrocindy@gmail.com. And I'd love to hear from you, your feedback. And please, any really good events, competitions, festivals, anything outdoors, share it with me, and I'll try to inform others the best I can. Randy, I love this. I love what you're doing. I shared yesterday on the show how to get a net walking group going in Ooltewah because I'm a business person and my life is consumed with which this is my season to get this going. Sure. So I'm loving it, but I'm thankful that I'm smart enough to know, Cindy, stop. And I'm to the point where I've been active enough where I crave it. If I'm not out there enough, I just crave it and I have to have it. But it's hard, to get that balance. And that's what, we're helping people do. And that's a lot of the theme behind the guest. I love what you talked about, the whole healthy attitude. It's not just about being active. It involves, to Joe earlier, about chiropractic care and so forth. Randy, really quick, how about your information? How can people contact you?
We are a 501c nonprofit. So you can catch me there, info@wildtrails.org. The 200-mile club, 200mileclub.org as well. So.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Randy. It's been great having you on.
Pleasure.
And I will have, I think you'll be a regular on the show, quite honestly. And again, thank you, listener, for joining us on Nooga Radio Outdoors. This is Cindy, and that's a wrap.
The Tennessee Valley's news, talk, and sports leader. Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and